fun.
Well, here we are at the Clifford E Nature Sanctuary. This is a beautiful area, about 400 acres of aspen parkland and sand dunes. And these sand dunes were created about 10,000 years ago. There used to be a huge lake in this area, a tremendous lake. And that actually drained. And when it drained, it left these large areas, exposed areas, and part of it was sandy. And so the wind picked up the sand and created these dunes. And what's really interesting is that in between the dunes, there were depressions. So these depressions filled, and over time, there was organic matter built up. And that created a very rich aquatic environment, which you see right now. And these are the trails of the Clifford E Nature Sanctuary.
Yeah, I guess we're right down here then, right?
Okay, and Lou and I had the wonderful opportunity to come here every day if we wanted to, because we just lived over about, 5-minute walk from here. So I was able to learn about this sanctuary through our life on the acreage.
Okay. Clifford E Nature Sanctuary. It was established in 1978. In fact, I was involved with the original designation of the land because I used to live on an acreage just a stone's throw away from here. And every morning I would drive to work, and I would drive by this beautiful marshland, and I would see the changes taking place in and around here where this increased number of acreages developed. So I thought, you know what, let's try to protect this marsh. And of course I didn't have the resources, but fortunately at that time the Canadian Nature Federation had a program whereby they could set lands aside. And I was at the right place at the right time to be able to make those connections. And there were a number of other people involved at the very early stage, but as it developed over time, we set this area aside so that by 1978 it was protected. And I was the first chairman of the board. Had been involved in the initial management, and one of the things that we did was to build this fence. And this fence over here where the people are is actually been built by Fort Saskatchewan inmates. That was sometime in 1979. And now, look at all these young folks coming, young families. It's terrific. In fact, there are 3 generations. When I first established this land, there are a lot of young families here now. And now you have families, actually the grandchildren of those who originally came to the sanctuary. Look at them all. Isn't that how nice? You walk in the boardwalk and you can see things.
Oh, thank you. We like when it's not muddy after all the rain.
There you go. All right, have fun. See all the people hiking along here? It's terrific. There's a certain part of it is just the woodland area, and then you go into the marsh proper. So you will be going through, and there you hear, that's a yellow warbler singing there. You see if we can hear it. There you go, that was a yellow warbler. Very common warbler on this particular piece of land. Incidentally, 42 years ago, there were many more species than there are now. Migratory bird numbers are declining at a tremendous rate. Most people don't realize that, but if you are associated with one area over a longer period of time, you'll find that many of the species that used to be here are no longer here now. It's just part of human development, increased numbers of people. That means the environment in some areas just suffer no matter what you do. It's just a matter of too many people crowding in on some spaces, because migratory birds come from a long way away, and their movements back and forth are really impacted by development. when you're ready. Well, this is part of the boardwalk. It's 1.1 kilometers long. And it's a great attraction because it's easy to walk and see nature on both sides. You'll hear some of the tree swallows flying above. We had some coots over here. And this particular spot was a great place for marshlands. And here we got a family walking along with the two little dogs. Dogs are allowed in the sanctuary as long as they're on leashes. And so that gives people an opportunity to take their pets for a walk. You'll see this water to my right has a little duck swimming in there, and that is actually a ruddy duck. Ruddy ducks are real comical. The duck is swimming in the reeds. It's hard to see because it's a long ways away. This area now has got a lot more water than it did have in the last 20 or 30 years. When it was first established, there was a fair amount of water, not quite as much as there is now because we had such a wet summer. We had 3.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, which is a lot of rain, and really increased the water levels, which is higher than it's been for a long, long time. And over here you can see a vista. There's a portion of this actually was dry, quite dry about 20 years ago. 25 years ago, it was much, much lower water levels than we have now. It's nice to see the water come back. It really does allow a lot of the species that nest here to come back and reoccupy the marshes. See them feeding them?
Okay. Some coots.
Yeah, that's a coot with its youngster. There are actually 2 youngsters out there. And this female coot is pulling out the roots of these rushes and breaking them up for the youngster to feed on. You can see the head going down. Well, there you go. It's pulling out the roots of the rushes. Then it chops up the bottom part and feeds it to the young. It's really nice to have this boardwalk to keep your feet dry. But I need to tell you, when we first purchased this land, there was 140 acres at the time. Now it's about 348. So we've increased the size of the sanctuary considerably. But what's interesting initially is this boardwalk was actually part of a walkway where the owner had put dozens and dozens of car bodies along this way, and he pushed it down, and instead of walking on a nice boardwalk like this, you would be walking over corduroy put on top of the car bodies. So that has changed tremendously now. So now we have beautiful boardwalk with people enjoying their hikes, but the original farmer had to walk over corduroy with car bodies underneath.
This little fellow is a baby coot. You can tell them with their usually a little bit of an orange on their head. This tree is very appropriately named the trembling aspen.
This area, when it was set aside in 1977, had a fair bit of water. And then we had a period that was very dry. There was hardly any water anywhere in these areas here. But now, this year, we've had so much rain that the water levels have increased within a couple of months. It's just amazing how much water there is here. And if you look at the trees, you'll see they're all standing in water. And if this water keeps up at this high level, we'll find that most of these trees will die within the next 2 or 3 years. And that's the dynamics in nature. It always changes. Things go from one extreme to another. Sometimes you have moderate weather conditions, then you have extreme weather conditions. But those dynamics create an environment which is in a constant state of flux. Things are changing all the time. And that's part of nature. You have to take that into consideration when you set aside natural areas. You have to have a variety of natural areas which really encompass a whole range of situations and conditions. The great attraction to this sanctuary is the fact that you have a boardwalk going over the water. Now I need to pay tribute to a lady who is very instrumental in having been involved in the management of the sanctuary, but particularly in the construction of this boardwalk. There's about a kilometer of boardwalk here, and it took a huge effort to get the funding and then the construction of this particular boardwalk here. And it was Mark Jaynee, who is the lady who for years really worked exceptionally hard to get this done. And you have to pay tribute to the power of the individual. If there's any person that I have a great deal of respect for, it was Mark, for all of our efforts over the many years. We wouldn't have this. And right now there are many people coming to visit the sanctuary, sometimes as many as 500-600 people a day. And behind all this is just one person in terms of getting this structure put in place. So power of the individual is exceptionally important. And Mark Jaynee really stands out in that regard.